Is Brian Kohberger a monster? Yes, he is. Anybody who does something like this is absolutely a monster. He is a monster. And I will take it a step further and say he was groomed to be a monster, or groomed to be the monster. Let me explain. And actually, let me speak directly to Melissa Kohberger. Michael and Marianne, too. Back several years ago when I was advocating for your son and brother's innocence, hewing to the notion that someone is innocent until proven guilty, as anyone should do, challenging the state's case, analyzing the evidence to see what held up to scrutiny and what didn't, which was a very difficult task because there was so little transparency because of your son's defense team, to include him, I might add. Let's not fool anybody and think that he didn't have a great say in his defense. He did. He's a niggler. He likes to niggle in the details. He's a pedant. You know he is. So he was a formative part of his defense team. Well, Melissa, back then when I was advocating for his innocence until proven guilty, and he's proven to me he's guilty now by pleading guilty, and I don't believe him about being coerced. You shouldn't believe him either. We'll discuss that in another video about lies. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. But we'll discuss lying a bit in this video in a second. So, Melissa, I was availed of a video, and I'm not going to name names here, but I saw it. It was distributed to me, and I saw it, and I thought nothing of it at the time. I thought, because this is just innocent young kids playing games, role-playing, just, I did this too when I was a kid, and I'm not, I didn't turn out to be a monster who massacres four people. Could have been more if it wasn't for Murphy barking. And it could have been more if the task force didn't catch him. In fact, I guarantee you it would have been more if the task force didn't catch him. So kudos to the task force for catching him in now what to me was a very short period of time. It's magnanimous of them to take a monster off the streets. There's so many more out there, but at least this monster is off the street. But Melissa, maybe you remember this video where you and a male friend, and I don't know your age here, but I'm going to guess maybe you were, 14, 15. Brian looked to be, 12, 13, 14, something in that range. Anyway, you were videotaping it, and it was some kind of horror flick that you were pretending it was a horror flick. And who, pray tell, audience, do you think was the monster in this horror flick? Not the male friend, not Melissa's male friend, no, her brother, Brian, was the monster. Now, I'm sure this was all very innocent at the time, and her choosing Brian as the monster was a very unconscious, subconscious thing. Maybe there was some consciousness in it. He was the heavy-set, outcast, socially awkward individual even then. So, if you're going to choose a monster, who stands out there? Oh, well, Brian does. He stands out, so he's the monster. But he was serendipitously, I'm sure, I'm Melissa Kohberger, you didn't plan on making him a monster, but you were part of the grooming of him as the monster. He played the part. This is some kind of thing. This is like surreal when I think about it. Considering what has happened, it's surreal. He was the monster who was massacring them with a knife. Well, with a sword, actually. Fake sword, plastic sword, in this video. Slicing and dicing them up with a knife. Or, knife as a sword. Groomed to be a monster. Now, the grooming took many dimensions. One of them was him being, having learning disabilities, him being heavy, him being socially awkward, him being an outcast, him being bullied. All that played into his grooming to be the monster, his grooming to be a monster. And he became the monster. So we're going to go to this. And this is a New York Times article from January 13th of 2023. So shortly after he was arrested. But it's by Mike Baker. So I have not seen it refuted yet, any of this. This has not been refuted. Especially by Melissa Kohberger or Brian Kohberger, because they themselves have done an interview with Mike Baker right here. They themselves have done an interview. So they have legitimated Mike Baker. They've legitimated his reporting on this case by virtue of the fact that both of them have given interviews to Mike Baker. So I'm going to take what Mike Baker says in here as gospel because it hasn't been refuted and he's been legitimated by Melissa Kohberger herself and Brian Kohberger. So this is Brian Kohberger. This is the monster. And this does describe the inner workings of a monster, does it not? So let's read it. A criminology PhD student charged with stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death had written years ago of having suicidal thoughts, not being able to feel emotions, and observing his own life as if it were a video game, saying he could do whatever I want with little remorse. The new revelations about the suspect, Brian Kohberger, come from posts he made on an online forum in which he discussed his mental health struggles, as well as from interviews with those who knew him and messages he sent to friends that were obtained by the New York Times. So, back several years ago, when I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, when I presumed him innocent until proven guilty, I took all of this with a grain of salt because I thought that many in the mainstream media were running with stories that weren't true and were validated. And that still is true. Some of them were. But this is validated. And this is validated by Melissa Kohberger and Brian Kohberger by virtue of them legitimating Mike Baker and giving him a platform and granting him interviews. So this is true to form. This is solid. This has now been validated as far as I'm concerned. They paint a portrait of an anxious, isolated, and depressed teenager who turned to heroin use before eventually getting clean and becoming fascinated with studying criminal psychology, saying then that he hoped to one day provide counseling for high-profile criminals. Interesting. Like, why high-profile criminals? Why not just counseling, period? Because he's morbidly fascinated with high-profile criminals, namely serial killers, mass murderers. This is all describing a monster right now. This especially, look at this. Is this a monster or what? I feel like an organic sack of meat with no self-worth. He wrote in 2011 when he was 16, adding later in the same post, as I hug my family, I look into their faces, I see nothing. It is like I am looking at a video game, but less. Wow. Did you know this, Melissa? Did you know this, Michael? Did you know this, Marianne? I'm going to say, no, you didn't know it. You didn't know it. Why? Because you didn't really know your son. Clearly, you didn't really know your son. And you're still delusional to this day. You still don't know your son. Now, in part, that is because he didn't want you to know him. He didn't want you to know any of this part of him. And truthfully, when you come right down to it, he didn't want you to know him. So what did he do? He lied to you. He lied and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. And he treated you poorly, with little to no respect, as is clear in this article as well. Now, Mr. Koberger, 28, is facing murder charges, accused of sneaking into a home shared by students just off the university campus in Moscow, Idaho, and stabbing 4 of them to death in the middle of the night. At the time of the killings, Mr. Koberger was in the first semester of his PhD program at Washington State University, a 15-minute drive from the crime scene. He has maintained his innocence through his lawyer, and on Thursday waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing. Yeah, and that's interesting. Through his lawyer, but he himself never maintained his innocence. Only through his lawyer, where she said, I know Brian Koberger is innocent. I know Brian is innocent. But never, Brian told me he was innocent, or Brian said, I am innocent, or he didn't plead innocent. No, none of that. Just through the lawyer. And on Thursday, waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing. Never mind about that. It's wild. This is very profound, this statement. It's wild, said Jack Bayless, a Pennsylvania friend of Mr. Koberger's, who is among those trying to understand how Mr. Koberger came to be charged with such a heinous killing. Brian himself would have been fascinated by it, Bayless says. That's profound. Of course he's fascinated by it. Of course he is. That's why he did it. That's why he did it. What better way to counsel serial killers and mass murderers than to be one yourself, right? To fully understand what it's like to truly be a mass murderer or serial killer. In online posts by Mr. Koberger, dating from when he was a teenager, he berates himself and talks about feeling disconnected from society, unable to find meaning in life. He describes an array of mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, depersonalization, lack of emotion, and the constant thought of suicide. If only he just would have done it. The words were posted on a forum website called Tapatalk, previously known as Youku, where Mr. Koberger commiserated with others users while suffering from a little understood neurological condition called visual snow, in which a person's vision is obscured by scattering dots, much like the static seen on an analog television. Mr. Koberger did not use his name on his website, but post included a reference to his birthday. In addition, the username on the account, XR, matches an email address for Brian Koberger that appeared in a 2009 leak of accounts from an online payment company. That account listed his location as Everett, Pennsylvania, the place where Mr. Koberger grew up. Some of the posts also contained details that friends said matched their recollections of his behavior and struggles at the time. Friends had previously described Mr. Koberger as having an intellectual bent, but said that he occasionally turned cruel and angry. At Washington State, his peers said he rankled some people with a habit of over-explaining and sounded particularly condescending when he spoke to his female classmates, a superiority complex. The online posts from his teenage years provided deeper insight into what appeared to be a dark period of his life. On the forum website, Mr. Koberger wrote that he saw a sickly, tired, useless, and stupid man when he looked at himself in the mirror and felt that he did not deserve to live. He also lamented treating his father like dirt, though he considered him a good man. That's nice. Treated his father like dirt. And this is a good segue ultimately into another thing I think is going on and what could possibly be involved in a motive for targeting that house and the occupants therein, or at least a couple of the occupants therein. Nothing I do is enjoyable, Mr. Koberger wrote, except for this massacre, I'm sure. Because he certainly seemed joyous in the hours afterwards, didn't he? He was on cloud nine. I am blank. I have no opinion. I have no emotion. I have nothing. Can you relate? Nope. I cannot relate. I cannot relate in any way, shape, or form. But other monsters can, I'm sure. I'm certain. Mr. Koberger said that his absence of emotion had begun about the same time as his visual snow symptoms, in September of 2009. And one friend recalled him constantly talking about his fuzzy vision. I know it was something that really bugged him, said Thomas Arntz, who was friends with Mr. Koberger during high school, until they had a falling out. He was basically to the point where he was neurotic about it. Dr. Francesca Poletta, a neurologist and researcher at King's College London who specializes in visual snow, said it is so little understood that there is debate among scientists over whether to call it an illness. But Dr. Poletta has worked with people who find the condition to be debilitating. We still don't know what causes it, she said. We simply have to do more research. Dr. Poletta said that the presence of visual snow is not a sign of mental illness, but noted that one research team found that people who have the syndrome also report a high incidence of psychiatric issues, such as anxiety, depression, and depersonalization. Mr. Koberger wrote that he had tried anti-migraine medication, visited a neurologist, and gone on a strict diet, one that avoided sugar and starch, to try to resolve the vision problem. He wouldn't eat any bread, and he would only eat certain fruits, Mr. Arntz recalled. It was very restrictive. By 2012, it appeared that Mr. Koberger was learning to live with the problem. Sounding more optimistic, he wrote on the forum that he had accepted his ailment and was coming to terms with it. Let's see if they say anything more about him being disconnected, no remorse, no feelings, seeing nothing, feeling nothing when he's hugging his parents. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, isn't that enough? That's enough. Groomed to be the monster, and thus he became the monster or a monster. His family did not know him. He didn't want his family to know him. He treated his family like crap. He laments treating his father like crap here, which tells you he treated his father like crap. Well, if he treated his father like crap, he probably treated them all like crap to a certain extent. And he had this superiority complex, a know-it-all. He knew it all. He knows it all. I said it in another video, I'll say it here. He's a liar. I admit that my son's a liar. My son lies to us all the time. He still does. Even though confronted with it multiple times and us imploring him to be a person of integrity, he still lies. It is so ingrained in him. We don't know how or why. We have no clue how or why. It's not how he was raised. Both my wife and I are individuals of integrity. And we don't understand this dishonesty. The only thing we can figure is that, like I said, my theory is he was mostly raised online. That's on us. Maybe we should have, been fascist dictators in his life and refused to allow him to ever have any online activity whatsoever. But we didn't. We gave him a long leash. And this is what he and many in his peer group, most of them as a matter of fact, have done with that leash, that long leash. They've allowed the internet to raise them. And by virtue of us parents have allowed the internet to raise them. And when you allow that to happen, you allow your child to become a liar. They're groomed to be a liar, amongst other things. And Brian Koberger's no different. So he's a liar. It reminds me of this movie that I watched last night. Came across my YouTube feed and I watched it because it was Sam Neill, who died recently. I like Sam Neill as an actor. Australian actor. It's an Australian movie. It's a great Australian. It's just a very excellent Australian film. It's quirky and weird, like Australian films are, but I like it for that. I like quirky, weird films like this, and this is no different. It's interesting. It was 1990, so we're talking about 36 years ago. So if you have the time, give it a watch. But and I'm trying not to give away too much here, but Sam Neill has an odd relationship with his mother, probably very similar to the relationship that Brian Koberger has with his mother and his family. his mother doesn't really know him. She thinks she knows him, but she doesn't because he lies to her. He lies to her so that he can manage her perception of him. And he's kind of like just a individual who has arrested development. He's in his early 30s, yet you would think he was 16 by virtue of how naive he is and how he acts and his behavior. It's like arrested development at 16 or 14. Very much like Brian Koberger. Highly immature at, early 30s. And this character that Sam Neill plays is no different. Cal, I think is his name in the movie. Cal. C-A-L. I don't know if it's short for Calvin or what. His last name's Fitzgerald. Calvin Fitzgerald. But anyway, it's an interesting movie. He lies to his mother consistently, and she really has no idea about him. So he's painted a perception. Even though she thinks, in the least, she can see that, her son is going nowhere. He's a big disappointment. He's effectively a loser. And she laments this, but she doesn't really know who he is, and he doesn't want her to know who he is, so he just lies to her. His friend's wife constantly points this out to him too. Why don't you just come clean with your mother and quit lying to her? Why do you always lie to your mother? And why don't you grow up? So she's the antagonist in the movie. And she's spot on. So I thought this reminded me, this is like Brian Koberger. He's a big liar to his mother, to his sisters, to his father. He's a liar, Melissa. He's a liar, Michael. He's a liar, Marianne. He's lying to you. He's absolutely lying to you. He was groomed to be the monster. He is the monster, and you need to accept it. You're not going to be able to cope with this or manage it in any way if you don't accept that first. If you continue to be delusional and believe in his innocence, you're never going to get through this in a healthy way. You aren't. It's always going to be horrible, but it can be less horrible for you if you finally accept this. It's not healthy what you're doing. He's continuing to lie to you from prison. And I'll explain that in another video. I will explain that in another video. Maybe the next one. But yeah. Melissa, when you were playing those games with him, serendipitously, involuntarily, innocently enough, you were helping to groom him to be the monster. As was everybody else in his environment. And he became what he was groomed to be. So many monsters, so little time. That's another thing I want to discuss, perhaps in another video, is hot monsters versus cold monsters. He's a hot monster. Hot monster means in the flesh, one-on-one, you can touch it and feel the hot monster in your face. Cold monster are the monsters who operate the machinery of society that maims and murders en masse every day. They are as much monsters as Brian Koberger is a monster. But we don't see their faces because they can murder and maim from thousands of miles away. Hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. You never know who they are. They're a collective of cold monsters operating that machinery, that establishment machinery that maims and murders every day. Like I said, so many monsters, so little time, or so much time. That's it for now. I'm sure no one will watch this, but I'm putting it out there for posterity's sake. Take care if you're listening. Bye.